Kia ora, ko lui ko nzaho, nau mai ki te whare, welcome to the House. In his maiden speech way back in 2002, Labour's David Parker said he felt like Harry Potter arriving at Hogwarts. On Monday next week, Parker is leaving Parliament after 22 years and probably again feels the same way that Potter did when he left Hogwarts. On Wednesday evening, government business was interrupted as Parker gave his valedictory statement to the House and a packed public gallery peppered with former MPs and Prime Ministers.
I was elected for Labour on 27 July 2002 when I won the Otago seat. Campaigner extraordinaire Pete Hodgson trained me when I chaired his electorate committee. Parker in Parliament. I wore a purple checked shirt in every photo and every day. People said I'd stolen a tablecloth from a greasy spoon, a fashion crime. It was a winter election. I hired a banner from the owner of the ODT, Sir Julian Smith, but I'm staunch national. You're a media mogul and this is a purely commercial deal. We agreed a fee. Each Saturday, a giant Vote Labour Parker banner flew over the winter sports grounds and buzzed central Otago towns and ski fields. Julian donated his fee. With snow on the ground, the ski fields were booming. I love skiing and handed out my brochures as people came off toes. They came to me. I didn't have to move. Close to an upset, a steady stream of ministers came creating media opportunities. We won by just over 600 votes. My life and my family's changed that night. It has been a privilege to be elected to be representing my fellow countrywomen and men, and the 23 years since, I've given it my all.
The Labour journeyman has served in 2 Labour governments and 2 Labour oppositions during his time at Parliament, holding cabinet portfolios in both the Clark and Ardern administrations. Throughout all the roles and responsibilities he's held, Parker has been focused on 3 things.
A prosperous egalitarian economy, the protection of civil liberties and the rule of law, and good environmental outcomes.
As is typical in a valedictory statement, Parker used some of his time to go over some of the achievements on his resume.
I was Listener's Environmentalist of the Year in 2008 for my work establishing the emissions trading scheme and the 90% renewable electricity target, which remain cornerstones of New Zealand's efforts to reduce emissions. We got there with votes from Greens and New Zealand First, who both have a good voting record on these issues. Now, my wider work on upholding civil liberties included on the New Zealand Bill of Rights Declarations of Inconsistency Amendment, and this created a pathway for Parliament and the Executive to respond to declarations from the senior courts while maintaining parliamentary sovereignty. In 2017, I charted a pathway into the important CPTPP trade agreement, updating our screening regime for inward investment to include residential land. Kiwis should not be outbid by richer people from overseas and be tenants in our own country. This is as true of the most beautiful lakeside property and the most modest urban home, which is another Kiwi's dream. Leveraged landlords get capital subsidies year after year. Grant Robertson and I fixed this, but sadly it was reversed. Maybe we went a little bit far, but we were right.
Also common in valedictory statements is the practice of having one last lash at promoting your pet policy. For Parker, this is tax reform.
The revenue-neutral tax switch I proposed is sometimes described as a wealth tax, but it's better seen as a tax on income from capital. Think of it as an average rate of return of 4.5% taxed at a third. In fact, it's less because the family home and contents, plus an additional $5 million of investments each, $10 million for a couple, were excluded. It's always been difficult to convince the other side on tax. At times I've found it surprisingly hard on my own side too.
Perhaps a combination of his background in law and his egalitarian beliefs, Parker has a manner that has seen him being associated with the adjectives of meticulous and intelligent, but also sometimes boring or nerdy. Parker is definitely aware of this. In his speech, he acknowledged that his interest in the specialised details has sometimes led to him being called a wonk. But as he alluded to in his speech, there are certainly worse traits to have as an MP, and as a self-professed conviction politician, it's likely he wouldn't give that trait up to be more popular.
R.N. Williams recently surprised me by saying, "You're different." I asked, how? "You don't need affirmation, and so you're happy to disagree. It can be a weakness too." Yet officials thrived on it. That's who I am, a conviction politician, clear in my values, my ideology, no communist, part capitalist, part socialist, class not race. And I'm 100% sure Labour's my place. I've fought many battles. I've stood on principle, I've won and I've lost. But I leave here knowing that on environment, civil liberties, and most precious of all, a prosperous egalitarian society, I've tried to move the dial. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. Robert Frost, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
I te whakarongo koe ki te whare. You've been listening to The House, a program made with funding from Parliament's Office of the Clerk. Mātiwa.